What's up, guys? Welcome to Nerf Herder Studios. So we're going to be doing tons of stuff on this channel, but we figured no better way to kind of get a video out here and start off than the Rise of Skywalker. This is what brought our love and interest to film growing up with Star Wars as kids, and it all came to a halt today with the Skywalker saga concluding. And there'll be tons of spoilers in this here, so we're just going to jump out in front of that here. Lots of spoilers in this. We're just going to talk about everything in this movie because I feel like it's impossible to do anything in this here without spoiling it. So if you've not seen the movie, of course, go see it immediately. Come back, see what we've got to say, because we've got thoughts on it for sure. And really what you've got with this movie is the conclusion of the sequel trilogy with Disney that JJ kicked off, passed the gauntlet over to Rian Johnson, which then came back to JJ. He's got to wrap up this trilogy, tie in the prequels, the original trilogy, and really with The Last Jedi too. Tons of BS with that movie. A lot of things that people did not like about it. A lot of things, us included, that we didn't like about that movie. So is JJ going to come back and try to tie some of those things up to make it better, and really just taking 42 years of Star Wars legacy and bringing this to a conclusion in one epic finale. So the big question is does it live up to it, and are we satisfied with the movie?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a blast. I thought this movie held up with really any other Star Wars films in terms of excitement and adventure. The pace was fine. It kept you engaged. It kept you in the moment. There was never a moment where I was just kind of bored or tired of whatever was going on camera. I mean, I think they kept everything moving pretty steadily, and yeah, I mean, I think it was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. We love that we've already talked a lot about this and stuff, and very fast paced.
Yeah,
The movie just kind of like jumps in and goes. I mean, even with the opening crawl, we all knew Palpatine was coming back, and they just jump right out there like, yep, confirmed, here we go. Palpatine's in this. He's the big threat. It wasn't this overlooming thing that we were going to discover just by Rey's hand. Everybody knows Palpatine's out there. It's brought up, in the beginning of the movie.
Right.
And they wasted no time, kind of jumping into this, which we just watched a couple other reviews, and a lot of people seem to complain about the fast pace of how this movie could have been stretched out. And while we agree with that for sure, I think this movie had so much, of a task at its hand. And if The Last Jedi would have continued off of The Force Awakens to make this a flowing story, JJ really had to kind of pick up your interest again, which is why I feel the beginning of this movie feels very rushed. Like, you got to establish something again, because there was nothing in The Last Jedi to carry over into this at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the main thing or the main criticism I've seen, like you said, is the pace. It's very fast. They're trying to fit a lot of things in a small amount of time, but, to that I also say, well, what else was JJ supposed to do? He created a formula that Rian Johnson decided to go off script with. Rian Johnson was trying to make a movie that was subverting expectations and basically derailed the entire thing from the beginning. So JJ's having to double back now, answer the questions that we didn't get answered from The Force Awakens, tie up loose ends from The Last Jedi, and kind of retcon some of the stuff there too, and then also conclude the whole story. So there was a lot of stuff to fit in. I really liked how they did just jump right out there and say, Palpatine's the new threat. From the very get-go of the film, the first opening sequences are Kylo Ren going to basically this temple that Palpatine has been living in for, however long, basically, while Palpatine comes right out and says that he's been pulling the strings the entire time.
Yeah, which was awesome, because I think a lot of people kind of were thinking about that, and one thing that kept getting brought up is, if Kylo is talking to Vader's helmet, how come Anakin isn't showing up as a Force ghost and just saying, hey, like, everything's cool, dude, like, I found my way, like, I built my relationship with my son in the end there, like, we're good, like, everything's good to go. And that was one of the first things I thought about coming out of The Force Awakens. It's like, loved the movie, and that was just the one thing I was kind of like, man, I wonder what that little nugget is. And they tied it up nicely just by very simply just stating it's all been Palpatine. Exactly. Palpatine's been the voice in Kylo's head the whole time. Palpatine created Snoke. So all of that stuff just tied together. And again, the only thing that's been a disappointment about this trilogy in general is that there was no, overlining arch for a story that was going to flow through these movies. It was really how Mark Hamill had said, during the press tours for The Last Jedi. It's very much just the passing of the baton. And J.J. Abrams, you could tell right from the get-go, from the first trailer, we're at Star Wars Celebration, right from the get-go in that first trailer, you could tell right away that he was going to change things that we saw in The Last Jedi. And it was a point to show us Luke's saber repaired in that trailer, to see Kylo's helmet getting repaired. He was telling us as the audience, just like, listen, like, I'm bringing this stuff back. I know you guys aren't happy with it. I'm not happy with it. And there were multiple moments in this movie where subtly, but definitely harked back to, I'm not happy with these choices in The Last Jedi.
Certainly, yeah. I think JJ made it very obvious, if he hadn't already, in the press tour for The Rise of Skywalker, with, you know, going on the record saying that, you know, I don't think Star Wars fans go to Star Wars movies to see things basically being said that this doesn't matter, right? He's talking about Rian Johnson with the choices he made in The Last Jedi to, like I said, subvert expectations, which ended up being, well, none of this that we've set up matters. We're going to throw all these curveballs at you to make it interesting, but at the same time, you know, that's not what Star Wars fans go to a movie to see. They don't go to a Star Wars movie to see all these wild, you know, different ideas coming out. They want something that's going to continue the lore and continue the formula that we've gotten so far. And I think JJ, you know, in the movie especially, there's a lot of different parts where he goes right out and talks about The Last Jedi. There was a specific part where the Resistance is talking about, well, why don't we just do what, you know, Holdo did, and you know, hyperspace light speed through these ships like kamikaze right into them. And then one of the other Resistance pilots was like, well, are you crazy? That's a 1 in a million, you know, shot. Basically saying, like, that was kind of BS. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely. I mean, probably one of my favorite lines out of the movie is when Rey's tossing the saber back on Octu, and Luke, that's where we get introduced to Luke, where he catches the saber out and just basically like, you know, disrespect the Jedi's weapon like that.
Right.
And that was an immediate call to what Rian Johnson chose to do in The Last Jedi. And if you're a fan of The Last Jedi, like, that's cool. Like, this isn't all about just like bashing on The Last Jedi. We'll start diving into everything with Rise of Skywalker here, but you know, when that movie started and all the anticipation, you waited 2 years to see what that interaction was going to be between Luke and Rey, and it didn't have to be what everyone thought it was going to be. It didn't have to be, yes, let me train you and I'm back in the fight. You know, you could have done the hermit thing, but when he takes that saber that had been cut off with his hand, you know, in Cloud City, gone for years, and it just pops back up out of nowhere. He hasn't seen this thing for 30, 40 years.
Right.
And it's just like, nope, this isn't important to me. See you later. I don't think so.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the most disrespectful things that I've ever seen happen. And, you know, I can appreciate a good plot twist. I can appreciate, you know, something that drives a character to a place that you don't expect them to go. But for them to, you know, such an important thing, this was your father's lightsaber. This has survived, you know, basically 6 films, 7 actually, if you're, you know, including The Force Awakens. And you've seen it for the first time since The Empire Strikes Back, and your first thought is just to toss it over the cliff. Like, that just, to me, was completely out there, didn't agree with it, wasn't okay with it, and I thought JJ specifically addressed that in this film.
Yeah, he basically, what Rian Johnson did is wipe The Force Awakens away like this. It was just like, everything that was building to that, it made The Force Awakens for absolutely nothing. Right. Like, frustrating. Obviously, we're not happy with The Last Jedi, and the reason that we're talking about some of these points, and there's so many more you can run with, is it just stacked up to how much of an impossible task J.J. Abrams had coming into this movie when he had set up a bunch. Granted, he took a safe route in The Force Awakens, but he introduced new characters. There were a bunch of new ideas to explore, and Rian Johnson chose to squash all those ideas. Only thing going into this movie that you knew before we got the reveal of the Emperor, obviously the Resistance and the First Order are going to have to figure this out. The Resistance is going to build back up. We'll get the last battle of, you know, some sense, and Rey and Kylo are going to have some kind of altercation. Like, that's all you knew leaving The Last Jedi. That movie didn't set you up anything. And I've said this a million times. If you wanted to make this more intriguing going into The Rise of Skywalker, you end where Rey takes his hand. Like, Rey takes Kylo's hand, fade to black with that close in, let it rock.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's kind of where we got with that. So let's jump into the movie.
Yeah, we'll jump into the movie. So, you know, like I said, you start out, you know, right out the gates, you have Kylo going to, you know, find Palpatine, and we find out that Palpatine has basically been pulling the strings all along.
Who looks amazing.
Yeah, that was incredible. So I was wondering, leading up to this, how are they going to make Palpatine look? You know, I've always been a fan of his makeup work and the artistry that goes into that, but I thought they did a great job. He looks very good. He's got these glossy white eyes.
Like right out of the Sentinel, man. Like the horror movie The Sentinel, like straight up.
And you haven't seen that before. You know, we've only seen the Sith with the red and yellow eyes. You know, you've never seen, he was almost like a zombie. Like, you know, and they kind of referred to it as that, as such, as he's more of a spirit, you know, like the undead. You know, they're talking about how
first line in the crawl.
Exactly, and I thought that was a really cool take on the character. I thought the voice work of Ian McDiarmid was spot on. Some of the best lines that he's done in the entire saga come in this first 10-minute sequence. But like I said, you know, we get right out the gates. Kylo Ren is confronting the Emperor. He finds out and he finally understands that, you know, Snoke, Vader, it was all a fugazi. It was all a sham. It's always been Palpatine in his head. And I think that's an awesome take, especially with, you know, kind of going back to The Last Jedi, where Snoke was kind of just, you know, wiped away. Like, you had this crazy, powerful guy, and then Kylo's able to just simply dupe him and kill him, and that's that, you know. But now we find out that Palpatine actually was, you know, working on cloning and you know, things like that. So maybe Snoke wasn't as powerful as we thought he was.
Right. Yeah, and it was, when Palpatine showed up, it was crazy to start the movie like that. Like, they just hit the ground running. I thought they were going to keep Palpatine in the background, and then we would get kind of like the big epic conclusion thing, and they, like, right away, they're just like, here it is, dude, we're setting it all up. And going to Kylo, his arc through this movie, I thought was fantastic. I loved Kylo's arc through all this. I feel he's really been the most interesting character in this trilogy, just because he's the only one dealing with conflict. I love Rey's character in The Force Awakens. I feel like they didn't do anything to progress her in The Last Jedi, and we got a lot more of her in this movie, which gave her at least a better arc. But the one that's been consistent through all these, has been very interesting, has been Kylo, just because there's so much kind of riding on him, you know, struggling. He's not this perfect Sith. Like, he's a rage, like, infueled person.
And I want to address that real quick. One of the biggest criticisms I see about Kylo Ren from fans and critics is that he's like this quote-unquote emo kid, right? He's this emotional basket case, and he's not a true villain. And I'd like to just, you know, say that I don't agree with that at all, because if you think about it, he's young. He's probably, what, 18 in this movie, 19 throughout these films. He's struggling with basically, you know, parent issues, being led away with the dark side. Luke tried to kill him when he was training, you know, all of these different things. He kills his father. He tries almost to kill his mother. He's struggling with all these different things. Of course he's going to be, you know, showing that rage and that emotion. I think that's what drives his character, and what's really interesting about him is that he has all of those feelings. Yeah. And it's easy to connect with that.
Yeah, I think some very, very interesting and complex. And and it was super cool to see the interactions between them. Probably the best part of The Last Jedi, one of the best parts, was, you know, the Force interactions between them, you know, which they led back into this movie, and it actually had a very significant part in this year too. But when they first kind of interact, and, you know, Rey does the whole backflip thing and kind of like cuts down his tie, and they have that Force battle there, you know, with the ship. It was so cool, man, because Kylo knows who she is, and he's trying to drag this out of her. And when she shoots that lightning out, dude, like, you know, before they even tell you who she is, it's just, you know, it's just now the water's boiling. You're just waiting for this thing to pop at this time. It was so sick how they displayed that.
Yeah, I thought that was incredible. I love where they went with her Force powers. You know, I like I said, with The Force Awakens, I thought was great with, you know, building her base, but like The Last Jedi didn't really do a good job of developing her character any further.
Yeah, they're just like, here's a day after The Force Awakens, and now I all of a sudden I care about all of this out of nowhere, and I'm overpowered, and there's no explanation at all.
But, you know, they did a good job setting this up. You know, obviously they show that she's been training with Leia, and Leia has, you know, kind of taken on that master role. She refers to Leia as master, which was awesome.
That was so cool.
And you know, so clearly Leia has been teaching her the Force, and we even, you know, see some clips where they use some really good CGI work to show Luke training Leia. So it was really cool how they kind of passed that along. But now we have a basis of, okay, Rey is learning now from a true master, a true Jedi, which was Leia. And that's how she has developed these powers. So now her powers are amplified, and she's even learning more about herself with this lineage kind of coming, you know, above water. Right?
Yeah, because she's struggling the whole movie to understand. Like, she feels it. She feels it. She knows there's something there, and it all comes to steam. And watching her struggle with that, I thought was awesome. It was nice because you knew when they showed Dark Ray in that little snippet that they're not going to go down that road.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't show that, obviously, which immediately tells you they're not going to do that. But I thought they still did a good job showing her struggle, kind of feeling that rage. Because one thing we all talk about after The Force Awakens, when she's like fighting Kylo, like she's got that rage in her, and it was talks then like, is she a Palpatine? Because look at the aggression that she's carrying in her fighting style. And plus, some of the different attacks that she would do, that full blown like over the head chop down and stuff.
Yeah.
Seeing her kind of struggle with who she is and who she wants to be or who she doesn't want to be, feeling that call to the dark side, and being able to get control of that, which ultimately comes down to Ben being the one that almost, the Rise of Skywalker in a sense, Ben Solo, and then later being Rey taking the name, but Ben kind of comes to her aid like in that moment and prevents her from cutting down the Emperor. I mean, that's what they wanted since the Return of the Jedi. The Emperor's always been like, cut me down, strike me down, and fulfill your destiny.
Exactly.
So it's still the same role for him, and Ben and Rey together kind of were the ones to take that out.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I love how they explored her new powers in this. A lot of folks, or at least JJ, had said previously that he was worried that a lot of fans would reject some of these powers that they show, but I thought it was excellent. They really go a lot deeper into the whole idea of the Force being something that you can manipulate to the point of almost projecting yourself in another place. That Force projection, similar to what was happening between the two of them. Communicating in The Last Jedi. And in this one, they go kind of even further. There's lightsaber duels using that same method where they're on two different planets and they're having a lightsaber duel. They're connecting each other, and they even transfer weapons to each other, which is really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool, man. And speaking of the weapons too, getting Leia's saber, oh man, that was
so awesome.
Yeah, such a BA moment with that to kind of, yes, like she had a saber, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then, and having Ben and Rey together with each saber, like they're carrying the Skywalker sabers,
Yep.
There was just so much to that, and a lot of this movie does write off the nostalgia and stuff like that, but that's kind of what you need to do to conclude this,
Right.
One thing that I want to just drop some praise on, the way that they got Carrie Fisher involved in this movie and still gave her a meaningful arc and a place in this, and she wasn't just kind of side-straddled through everything. Like, she had, like, a meaningful part in this movie, and they gave her a very satisfying conclusion that actually served the story. Like, props to them for making that work with all this archive footage. Unbelievable how they made that work, and giving her first billing. That was the first thing. When the credits rolled and you saw her name first, I, like, broke down into tears. I was just like, it's so beautiful that they gave her the first bill.
That was, the most respectful thing, and they treated it perfectly. I think JJ really honored her memory, and he did a really great job. I mean, they made the scenes meaningful. They were able to do some really interesting work, with archive footage, and then having the actors now, come in and try to make that relevant to this story, which worked out really well. I mean, most of the sequences were taking place on the same planet, and they were able to use a lot of the footage from The Last Jedi when they were on the original planet at the beginning of the movie. So it worked out well, and I think overall it added to the story because we didn't get a lot of Leia in The Last Jedi. She gets blown out into space. She comes back. She's like in a coma for half the movie.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of her, unfortunately, which is kind of a bummer. And this kind of tied up those loose ends.
Yeah, totally. And I thought it was very poetic how she kind of went out the same way Luke did. Like, it was on her own merit. It wasn't anybody striking her down. Like, she basically exerted the energy that she needed to make her connection to Ben.
Right.
And she allowed herself to just kind of become one with the Force in that,
Yeah.
And that whole sequence was so powerful because you've got the lightsaber duel going on. Rey is getting destroyed by the end of this. Like, Kylo's definitely got, the better half of that.
Right.
And, and Leia reaches out just enough to distract him. And, like, Rey delivers a kill shot.
Yeah.
And it's just like, holy cow. But she chooses to heal him, which is almost the death of Kylo Ren and the rebirth of Ben, Solo.
Yeah.
And then you get the hey kid. You know what I mean? And you're just like, dude, really? And Harrison Ford came back, man. He was a trooper and a team player and came back for a small role in this, which delivered the most emotionally impactful moment of this entire trilogy for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I would argue this is the most emotional sequence since probably like The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, this sequence was so important. Really tugged at the heartstrings. I mean, you have Leia reaching out, first time she's communicated with Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, enough to make him distracted to where he lets his guard down. Rey gives him the kill shot. She basically, like you said, this is where she's killing off Kylo Ren, and Ben Solo is a rebirthing. He's coming back. She heals him, showing him the good of the Force, right, bringing him back to the light, and just what he needs, similar to the Force Awakens. The thing he needed to push him over the edge was killing his father, right? The thing that he needed to go full on dark side brings him right back. Harrison Ford in this sequence comes back, has like a vision. They have a conversation, and it's like the most emotional thing I've ever experienced. And you know, they even used some of the same lines from The Force Awakens, where it's like he's talking to his father. He says, "I don't know if I know what I have to do. I don't know if I have the strength to do it."
Right.
And,
it's
and
like
Han
it's the
Solo's
same
like,
thing.
"You are strong enough." And Kylo Ren takes his lightsaber out, same way he just, you know, killed his father right in front of him, but this time he chucks it in the ocean, throws it away. He pushes away the dark side.
Yeah.
And the one sequence I just broke down in tears was where he calls Han Solo Dad, and he doesn't say anything, and Han Solo says, "I know."
Yeah.
And it's like the whole "I love you, I know" thing
Yeah.
finally lived on, dude. And it was just the most emotional thing I've ever experienced. I broke down crying. I couldn't handle it. I was like, this is too good.
Yeah, it was a good moment. It was a really good moment.
Yeah.
It harks back so much to Return of the Jedi with Luke and and Anakin, at that point. So just a beautiful moment where it's just like, yeah, like in Luke's case, never had his dad,
Right,
and that's like the
right.
first moment that like his dad is looking upon him,
Right.
Where in this case it's Kylo Ren's memory, but still pulling that in with that.
Yep. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
excellent.
it was beautiful, man. And how about Wedge until he's popping up there, dude?
That was
Like Dennis
cool.
Lawson comes back and
Yep.
just a quick 2-second moment, man, but just enough to know like Wedge has been there, dude. Wedge has done it all. Wedge has been there since A New Hope. He's the only one to go through like all of these battles, dude. And, like make it through. It's so cool.
That was awesome, and going back to what we said, there was a lot of fan service, a lot of nostalgia in this film, and I think it served its purpose. I mean, from the get-go, we're going back to Palpatine, we're going back to those ancient Sith, lores and legends that we heard of in the prequel trilogy, and then you're bringing back all these famous characters. You got Billy D. Williams, who was as good as ever. You had Wedge Antilles back, in his action role. And you even had, a lot of other folks, like John Williams made an appearance in the film. There was like these little Easter eggs that just kind of brought everything full circle with the nostalgia piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was that whole, thing of like who's gonna not make it through this movie. It's like where's that ultimate sacrifice coming in? And I think it was pretty obvious, knowing that it was gonna be Ben.
Right.
It was just a matter of how that was going to happen. And I like the way that went down too, because he chose to make his exit too. Like it
Right.
wasn't him getting cut down. He led the hero's journey arc at the end there, and he made the choice, to use the Jedi healing power that
Right.
Rey had showed him to basically heal Rey and sacrifice himself in that instant. And when they showed him disappear, going properly as a Jedi, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Properly dying like that.
Him and he and Leia at the same time, they both both went away at the same time, and it was just like so poetic, because it's just like, wow, they both made their sacrifice to the Force, and now they're one with the Force. You know what I mean? And they went out the same way Luke did, which was awesome. Just kind of to explain what's going on here. So, Palpatine's come back, and his goal is to kill Rey and have Kylo basically take over his Sith, his new Sith Empire. He's going to call it the Last Order, or the Final Order. Final Order. And, basically he's been creating this Sith fleet for years and years, and he's been kind of plotting his revenge, right? And finally, this is his moment. So we have this new threat. It's not necessarily the First Order, but it's the Final Order. It's this new fleet of ships that are the Sith, command is in charge, and this is where we get, the Rebels' call to action. which I really like this because, you know, traditionally it's always been the Resistance or the Rebels running away from the fight. You know, just, you know, kind of being in defense mode, defense mode, defense mode. This time, they're going straight into the action. They're taking it to the First Order. They're taking it to the Emperor. You know what I mean? We're going to go after them.
In epic fashion, too, because the one thing with this movie is kind of like that MacGuffin chase to, I forgot what it's called, but that, like, Sith relic, you know, in order to get to where Palpatine's hiding out. Because this is, like, some ancient, you know, Sith temple that's, it's not chartered. Like, the only way to get to this thing, basically, is by navigating through this MacGuffin piece.
Right.
And, you know, when Rey's about to throw it all away, and then we get Luke popping in, who's kind of just like, hey, like, this is your fight. Like, we're here, but this is your fight now, and it's time to do this. And Luke brings up Red 5, dude. Like, we got his X-Wing back, and, you know, super cool. And she navigates through, which brings everybody through, you know, into this space there. And that's when we get kind of like a big epic conclusion, which I was totally satisfied with because it wasn't like this insane giant space battle, like not like what you get in Rogue One, or, you know, at the end of A New Hope, you know, or Jedi or like Phantom Menace. You don't get this like insanely big space battle. Like it's focused on that, but it's really mostly focused on what's going on with the Emperor, Rey, and Kylo, which I liked. You knew this stuff was going on, but that didn't have to be that. We've gotten plenty of giant space battles, so they go back to it a little bit here and there, but you really focus on what's going on with like this balance and power of the Force, which was cool. I mean, we get like one of the most crazy displays of Force powers ever, dude, and the Emperor just like, boom, dude, it just like lights everybody up and just takes down every single Resistance ship, dude. Like,
I thought that was killer. So, you know, up until now, obviously the Emperor is kind of the most powerful, you know, that we've seen in these films, but this time we really get a sense of what the dark side does. And at this point, so, you know, Rey and Kylo have basically come to confront the Emperor, and the Emperor has this ability that he brings out, which basically sucks the life force out of the two of them. So he's taking their force powers to rejuvenate himself. So you can see his brittle body, rejuvenating, you know, flesh coming back, and he
goes back to like Revenge of the Sith Palpatine. Like it's not like Return of the Jedi Palpatine. He goes back to like Revenge of the Sith Palpatine.
Exactly.
With, like the red inner tunic piece and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was so awesome. You know,
and the same eyes.
Same eyes. The face kind of went back to where it was. Like he completely was revitalized and youthful again. And then he just uses all of that strength to basically send this force lightning up into the sky to just destroy everything. You know, he pretty much cuts off all of the communication and all the engines of all of the, you know, Resistance ships, and they all start just plummeting from the sky. And it's just like one of the coolest things because you've never seen that.
No, that was insane. What I mean? And they had like after that. That's after. You know, Lando shows back up with the Falcon after they've recruited this like ridiculous militia of ships, and like he just takes everything out. And if it's not for Rey, which was, oh man, amazing foreshadowing when they showed Rey. You know, when we first get introduced to Rey in the movie, when she's levitating and she's trying to speak and talk to like the ancient, you know, ancestors of the Jedi. You know, through all these generations of Jedi. And comes to land, they're not talking to me. I can't reach them, and whatever have you. It was beautiful foreshadowing to bring you back to that moment when she just kind of like looks up past everything going on in the battle and just like really out there. And then you get all the voiceovers, man, from like everybody, dude. And it takes the collective force of like all the Jedi within Rey and the power of the two Skywalker sabers, dude, to like bring the Emperor down, who's like infused with all the Sith. I mean, it's literally like everything Sith, everything Jedi, like coming into this final clash of lightning versus sabers, man. Like, so cool.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Seeing, you know, you get this awesome image of just Rey on her back, totally hopeless. Like this is really the one moment that we've gotten where Rey is vulnerable.
Yeah, we finally see vulnerable.
We finally get like a real character to connect with. Up until this time, Rey's she's like unbeatable. Unbeatable.
Like everything, she's doing everything perfect.
Yeah, she kicks ass, and I love, you know, a kick-ass, you know, female character, but like part of that character arc and character development is showing they have flaws that they need to overcome.
Yeah.
This is the first time she gets her ass kicked, and I loved it because then it sets her up. She's then channeling, okay, I've been defeated, I need to pull everything together and really channel the force and focus, and she goes looking straight up into the sky. She's watching all of her friends basically perish, and she's able to look past that and just grasp everything. And then you hear all the voices. You got Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Yoda, the whole team. Anakin comes back, and they're all talking to her, saying, basically, we're all here with you. You know, 1,000 generations are in you. Like, you are the one now. So fucking go. Excuse my language.
No, so it was amazing. Like the whole, they couldn't have concluded that in a better way. Yeah. You know, they really did a perfect job kind of bringing that to esteem, and that was something I was not expecting at all. Like once we knew the Emperor was coming back, then you kind of knew the setup and how that was going to come to a head. It was just a matter of how they were going to do it, and I thought they did it in a way that was very unexpected. Yep. I feel like there's so many things that could have been the obvious choice for that. But to show Palpatine really just conjuring all these Sith, and it takes the collective efforts of all the Jedi, I thought just made it a beautiful thing. Because with how overpowered they've kind of established Rey and just being like this perfect character, I think the easiest thing to run with would have just been like, oh, well, Rey's going to get the upper hand on the Emperor. And it's just like, okay, so where do you have struggles, though? This is what was nice about that, because it didn't take just Rey. It didn't take just Rey to overpower this. You know, it was Palpatine versus Palpatine, but like same bloodline, but different sides of the Force, you know, coming esteemed to this. You know, it's like the perfect, you know, like yin yang. You know what I mean? Exactly. It is such a great job with all of that, and tying in even how they did with some of these new characters. I thought, like we were saying, the Knights of Ren, finally getting to see them, some of these other newer characters that they brought in, they did it just enough with them where they didn't come in and change everything. This was really, you know, the journey of the characters that we've been established with, but they introduced just enough to give it some more context to kind of push forward some different things. And it was really nice to finally get Rey, Poe, and Finn, you know, all together on a big journey where we can actually connect with these characters as a trio and really emotionally, you know, gravitate towards them. We really
care about them. Right. You know what I mean? And that's the biggest flaw that I've seen in this new trilogy, is that you haven't given us anything to care about. You've separated these characters. They don't seem to mash up very well thus far, and you finally have a journey where they go on together, they struggle together, they fight together, they are there together, they're friends, and you can see that bond. We haven't gotten that, you know what I mean? So I think that was a big thing that a lot of people didn't like about The Last Jedi, that JJ, I think, course corrected and made us love these characters. Yeah. And going, you know, much to what you said, you know, we have a lot of these characters outside of Rey and Kylo that really up until this time haven't really gotten their moment. You know, the whole Last Jedi, Poe is just basically, you know,
he's a
foot soldier, right?
He's the shut up flyboy.
Yeah. It's like, I've dealt with you flyboys. Like, he doesn't get his moment. He's kind of just like, hey, shut up and follow orders, you know. Finn is the comic relief sidekick up until now. He's always just kind of pushed aside, making the one-line jokes.
They disrespected Finn so bad in The Last Jedi. And even though, like, his arc would have been amazing if, like, he would have had that sacrifice at the end of The Last Jedi. Would have, like, built some arc. Because in this, he does play a lot of, like, the sidekick role, but, like, he's there. And John Boyega, I love John Boyega. He's such a charismatic actor, and he's got, like, great screen presence. So it's very believable when you buy into his care for them. Like, when Rey and Kylo are kind of duking it out, and he's, you know, running off. I mean, you really buy into the emotion that he has and the care that he has for her, which is something that we didn't feel at all through The Last Jedi. Like, when they finally got back together at the end, there wasn't really that big emotional thing to that, because I was like, you guys just kind of, like, whitewashed all these characters and stripped away whatever we already were feeling for them that was set up in The Force Awakens. So it was nice to get some emotional connection between them. And really care about where their journeys were going to lead.
Yeah, I mean, I think every character actually got their moment. Yeah. You know, Poe Dameron.
And Chewie.
Yeah, thank God. Chewie gets his moment. Like, if you're going to talk about disrespect to people and characters, Chewie was, like, basically just forgotten about in The Last Jedi. Like, who's this guy, right? He finally gets his moment where they present him with the medal from Yavin, which was just so emotional. Yeah. Like, Leia dies, and her last wish before dying was, I want Chewie to have the Medal of Yavin.
Oh, like, man.
Incredible. So,
and his breakdown when they find out that she died, dude, and he is just, like, on the ground kicking and just, oh, dude, it was rough, man. And they did it from, like a wide shot, too. So it wasn't just, like, a zoom in on here. You're just kind of seeing this from far out, and, like, everyone's somewhat going about their thing, and here's Chewie just, like, can't keep it together. Like,
Chewie gets his moment. I loved it. C-3PO gets his moment. You know, with the whole my friends, like one last look at my friends. He makes his sacrifice, you know, for the Resistance. Finn finally has his moment at the end where he chooses to stay on the Star Destroyer, you know, which is basically suicide at this point. What happens when you blow this ship up? Well, you're on it, so you're going to die too.
Right.
So you think Finn's going to die. Poe Dameron, he's leading this resistance. You know, he's the general now. He gets his moment too. So I think they did such a good job of giving every character their respect, their due diligence to make every moment count.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
very well done.
Yeah, we loved it. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to touch on before we wrap this up is I thought it was so cool how they ended this film with Rey dying and coming back.
Right.
You know what I mean? So basically Rey has defeated Palpatine, and she's exerted all of herself to defeat him, and she dies, and Ben Solo basically makes the sacrifice, and he projects his Force being into her, you know, essentially reviving her.
Almost dying as a Palpatine and being reborn as a Skywalker.
Exactly. And then obviously he dies, you know, because of it, similar to how, you know, Leia and Luke died, he dies as well. And at the end of the movie, she pays the ultimate respect to the Skywalker family, goes back to Tatooine, goes back to Luke's home, where he was raised by his aunt and uncle, with the 2 lightsabers, buries them right there, where you know, because she goes there and no one's been there for years, right? You know, no one's been there since his family was murdered,
right? And
he, you know, left home. So this is the first time that anything Skywalker has come back to this place, and one of the locals comes up to her and she's like, you know, who are you? And she's like, Rey, and she's like, well, no one's been here for years, so, you know, like, Rey who? And she says Skywalker. And
while looking out, and you see Luke and Leia there.
Oh, that Force Ghost Luke and Leia watching over her, basically, you know, giving their approval. And that's the thing, I think.
And Leia in her old school garment too, man. Like back from A New Hope, but like Leia as we see her now, like older Leia, but still in her old school garment.
I think the biggest thing that they've struggled with so far in this sequel trilogy is truly giving this to this new generation, right? I mean, that was kind of the goal, was this is not Luke and Leia and Han's trilogy. This is Rey, Finn, and Poe. And they were having trouble kind of passing that on, and I think that last scene was just perfect. Like, you're basically, Luke and Leia are looking over you. They are Force ghosts, and they're basically saying, you're a Skywalker. You are a Skywalker now.
Yeah, and her and her droid, man, looking off into
they look over the twin sunset,
dude.
And it's just poetic, dude.
Yeah.
It's so poetic.
Like, the journey ended right where it began, dude.
Yep.
Like, it was... You couldn't have done it any better. It was the same way that Lucas, man, how Lucas wrapped up, you know, Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
You got Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru holding baby Luke, man, just kind of looking out, and you're just like, yeah, this is like a journey that's yet to become, you know. It was, yeah, man. I guess going into that, you're kind of like, what's the last shot of this movie? Mm-hmm. If you're wrapping all this up, like, how do you do it, you know? And I guess that never crossed my mind to go back to Tatooine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense. But I never thought about that, and it was subtle. That's what you need. It was a nice subtle ending. You got your big celebration, and when they were starting to cut, I was like, there's no way this is it. You know what I mean? And when they came back in a little bit, and it was just a very subtle exit, and really gave like the definitive meaning to the Rise of Skywalker, meaning, you know, Kylo Ren dying, Ben Solo, Ben Skywalker, coming back, you know, giving his life for Rey. And I forgot what the line of dialogue was in there, but there was some kind of line of dialogue that referenced to something where it doesn't matter what your name is, you know, or what your bloodline, something along those lines. Where she was like accepting a Palpatine, like none of that matters. It's who you are or whatever it was. So that way, it was such a perfect poetic way for her to take that name of Skywalker, because by blood she's a Palpatine, but you know, by the Force, by her heart she's a Skywalker.
Yeah, truly, yeah, exactly. And I thought that was awesome. And we get to see she's built her own lightsaber.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Is one thing we haven't seen, you know what I mean? Like, even in the original trilogy, aside from the Blu-ray release, you never saw Luke build his lightsaber or anything like that. And now she's got her own. Like, she's built this. You don't see it being built, but she has it now. You see it, and it's hers.
Turned it, and I was like, okay, what was that? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
it's really interesting.
She kind of turned it, almost as if, like, can that have multiple colors? You know what I mean? Like, do you have multiple crystals in there, kind of a thing, or what exactly? But she turned it, which kind of like brought it to that yellow. Yeah. Which was so sick.
Dude. And it looked like almost like the actual hilt was built out of her staff. Like it looked like the same material.
You're
as the
probably right,
staff.
dude.
So she used her staff, hollowed it out, and then put the kyber crystal in there, built the saber from that. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which was awesome, and her saber's yellow, which is really cool. If you want to go back to like more of the lore of the Jedi, where the color of their lightsaber and kyber crystal says something about who they are, and the yellow is kind of like that perfect balance. Like it's the closest to like white. You know what I mean? So really awesome.
Yeah.
I think if I was to rate this movie out of 10, I mean, it gets a solid 9 for me. Like, yeah, I thought it was a blast. I don't want to get into technical film criticism because that's not why I go to see a Star Wars movie. I go for the adventure. I go for the story and character development and the arc and just the overall hero journey, and that's what I got.
Yeah, agreed, man. The movie itself, I'm probably right there with you. Like, just taking it as a 9 and then stacking it up with, the monumental task that J.J. Abrams had to conclude all of this. Mm-hmm. And again, I still feel it was a hell of a challenge, not just to conclude the 9 movies, but just after The Last Jedi left you there.
Yeah.
How do you, in one movie, pick everything back up to just like, okay, let's reinvest everything and set everything back up again to conclude it again? Because there was nothing trailing through this trilogy at all. Like this was almost a standalone movie in a sense. It doesn't feel like the end of a trilogy. This could have just been a random standalone movie. Here's your new characters, the Emperor's back, and go. So out of that and making this so enjoyable, I can't think of one thing in this movie that made me just go, F this, F that.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, it's a perfect 10 out of 10. But
yeah,
it was just a monumental task, and I think he handled it very well. A lot of pressure on that, and I thought he did a great job.
I agree. Yeah. And by the way, we got these really awesome opening night pins. I know me and Scotty love a good pin.
Yeah.
Especially something that like shows, that we either camped out for something or were, the first dibs, the first guys to do something.
Yeah.
I think that was a really cool icing on the cake that Disney did for all these theaters to give people opening night pins.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Really cool. But
and free popcorn.
Small free popcorn and R2-D2 drinks and
double ticket
all the
prices.
other yeah. Disney gets you, man.
Yeah, dude. Hell yeah, man.
Cool. Well, thank you for tuning in. I think we're gonna try and do this more often. Nerf Herders, we got a lot more content coming your way, a lot more things in the works. So if you have, your thoughts on the movie, please tell us. Drop a comment, drop a like on the video. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys. Subscribe to the channel.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline. We got Instagram, which is Nerf Herder Studios there as well, also the Facebook page. So a lot of stuff's going to be coming here. We're going to be doing some short horror films and stuff like that, and we're lovers of film, man. We love film. We love this stuff, and Star Wars is what brought our friendship together, 13 years ago probably now,
yeah.
and our journey as kids just... Star Wars is just like running through our veins in our lives. So we just thought no better way than to get our first video out here than talk about the Rise of Skywalker. Because
absolutely,
that's the end of one journey. This is the beginning of our journey now. So
for sure,
that's gonna do it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Leave some comments down below. Hope you enjoyed the movie. Would love to know your thoughts. So we'll catch you all next time.